The Brandon Best Podcast. Episode 7. Neurotechnology with Yannick Roy.
My guest today is Yannick Roy. Yannick is a co-founder and the executive director of the Neurotechnology organization NeuroTechX. NeuroTechX helps facilitate the advancement of neurotechnology across the world. Today, Yannick is going to chat to us about some of the cool things NeuroTechX is doing to push this technology further and also the groundbreaking applications we could see as a result. Enjoy. Well, first, that was really awesome to see the BCI 101 series of talks that you guys just did over the past week or two. I just watched one of the videos this morning, actually, for going mainstream with Christophe, Olivier, and the other gentleman, Joseph.
Joseph.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's been the feedback for the whole talk series so far?
Very positive. So that's we were not sure about doing a marathon kind of thing, like 9 events, three per weeks for 3 weeks, 1 hour each. Well, they all ended up being an hour and a half. But the feedback is overwhelmingly positive. So we're definitely, and I just end the debrief meeting just like 3 minutes before jumping on this call. And we were discussing about what's next because everybody really enjoyed the series. We had a lot of registrations, good audience live during the event. So for the first 2 weeks, we had over 150 showing up at the live event, and we had many views on YouTube as well. So I think that the one that you looked at is close to 1,000 views. So we're really excited about the feedback we've received, the impact that we think we've provided, the value that we've provided to a lot of the people, because we've covered a lot of different angles from the industry side of things. The last week was more about the entrepreneurship aspect. The talks from Dhruv at ITER or Neuroball with Ramses. These talks were really, really inspiring about their journey in the field. So, and if I think about the day 3, week 2, we had a tutorial, hands-on tutorial. So
nice.
We had a in-depth kind of a deep dive in M&E Python for signal processing, BCI classification, things like that. So we did some science, some business, some consciousness stuff, some openings about the future, some technical. So, and everything seemed to have hit home somehow for different audiences. So this is what NeuroTechX is all about, 360 degrees about the field. So really happy that we covered that with the series with a very positive feedback. So we'll try to do it again and try to continue to improve our game.
Yeah, it seems like a great way to kind of keep the community engaged, especially during the whole quarantine time. People probably feel really isolated, and it's probably nice to get reconnected and also bring new faces in to stay connected and get into NeuroTechX. I'm wondering, obviously you've been with the organization here for a few years. What has the growth been like? I know personally from being in the Slack that I know, just based off the people involved in there, it's been growing and growing, but have you seen any standout approaches to expanding neurotechnology and getting other people interested and involved?
I think that we've done a really good job at bringing a lot of people that are in the field, early career in the field, curious about the field. So I think that if you Google neurotechnology something, you'll end up within the NeuroTechX ecosystem somehow, somewhen. So I think that we've done a good job on that. We started NeuroTechX in 2015, so this summer is going to be our 5th anniversary. It's been a blessing for me so far of seeing that growth, seeing how many volunteers want to help and drive this vision of facilitating the advancement of neurotechnology. We're all excited about the field. We're all excited about the future. And by just bringing more, I would say, energy in the system and trying to answer questions, enabling discussions, networking opportunities, showing businesses, and just evolving with the field. It's important here that we're not trying to go too fast, because neurotechnology is it's exciting, but it's a slow-paced field as well. It's complex. It's the brain. It's the most complicated thing ever. So we've seen that with other fields like VR. was supposed to be the VR year for the past like 6 years now.
Yeah.
How many people do you know that do spend at least 1 hour a day in VR? Probably not that many.
Yeah.
So, and VR is like magnitude easier than the brain is.
Yeah.
So if these fields that are way easier than the brain takes a very long time, obviously with neurotechnology, it's going to be kind of like a slow process. So I think that one of the things we're trying to achieve with NeuroTechX is we want to be a journey and a funnel that people evolve with, and we're a community that wherever you are on day one when you meet NeuroTechX and when you hear about NeuroTechX, you just jump on board in the family, in the NeuroTechX family, and then for the next 10 years, you hang around the NeuroTechX ecosystem. So maybe you'll start with a student club as an undergrad. Maybe you'll start from coming as a speaker, as a guest, because you have a startup in the field, and then you'll just evolve. And you won't be with NeuroTechX every day, and NeuroTechX won't be in your life every single day, but it will be there. And from time to time, you'll just get more value depending on what angle you're interested in. Whether it's, oh, we're going to be releasing our book by the end of the year, so you might be interested in that. You attend some events online. You're looking for fundraising for your startup, and then you contact NeuroTechX services. So at any point, NeuroTechX will probably be able to provide you value if you're in the field of neurotechnology, but it's not about delivering like a massive amount of impact on like, okay, this week we're going to just kill it and bring the field to the next level. Yeah. Like there is no such impact. And even more so because we're not externally funded by government or like big grants or like we see a lot of other initiatives that have a lot of money. We've bootstrapped NeuroTechX up to this point with pretty much zero government funding, but with sponsorships here and there, with little money here and there. So we're really excited of what we've been able to achieve on a bootstrap budget and the impact that we've had over the past 5 years. And now we're starting to look at how can we ramp up, and because we want to follow the field. We don't want to go faster in the field. We don't want to go slower in the field. So we go back in 2015 when we started NeuroTechX. There was no Elon Musk. There was no Facebook in the field. There was no, oh my God, this is going mainstream. So, and the FDA approval just since 2015, like number of FDA approval that different neurotechnology is seen in different, like the digital therapeutics field for neurotechnology and things like that, is changing the field. So we're evolving with the field at the same pace. So we're really definitely kind of like following the same pace than the field. So it's very exciting to be to feel that we're kind of like, I won't say at the forefront of the field. Obviously, we're not pulling the neurotech field with NeuroTechX, but we're definitely one of the players in the ecosystem of neurotechnology that do have a positive impact in the field. And our thesis is really about the ripple effect that in 10 years from now, when we look back, we'll be like, wow, okay, this is what all the little things that we do, all the little energy that we bring in the system will do this kind of like ripple effect or snowball effect, if you will, that at time when you're there and just looking at the micro, not looking at the macro, you don't necessarily see it or feel it, but it's when you look back a couple of years after, then you're like, wow, this has provided a massive impact. We're starting to see it with our student club initiative, where our student clubs and some undergrads are part of a club, and then they go in an internship in a company like Interact in Toronto is a very good example. And then they continue their journey in neurotechnology. And as they are in their second year of their masters, they are so much ahead that they would have been normally in their own personal journey in terms of skills, knowledge, contact, networks, than they would have been without NeuroTechX. Then once you take all these little things at scale at the international level with thousands and thousands of people, then you project that forward, and then you understand the ROI that we can bring and that we're bringing to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. From the I know like community education innovation, those are kind of like the three pillars of NeuroTechX that you kind of talked about in one of the videos. And for me, coming from one of those student groups, and now a recent grad, I always think about neurotechnology similar to how I think about getting into the space industry from like an engineering standpoint. It's really intimidating because it's this really like, I think the interdisciplinary aspect of it So I'm wondering, to your knowledge, like how many students are you seeing transfer from your guys' student clubs and actually making it into one of these companies in industry now? Are you seeing more of them now that NeuroTechX is being able to engage more of them? Are we successfully seeing people make the jump from student into one of these companies?
Yeah, well, first, not everybody will jump necessarily in the company aspect, but might continue in a master and a PhD,
Okay.
and would like definitely to have a good ratio, and not everybody after undergrad should, because it's the brain, it's complicated. So spending a bit more year at school, but it's not really school anymore with grad school. It's more kind of like you're doing and learning by doing, and kind of like reading papers and doing experiments and whatnot, but not necessarily going for, because the market and the industry will give you some knowledge and know-how and expertise and experience, but the research aspect will give you another one as well. And I think that both are very valuable. So I think that's important that we support kind of like both, depending on the individuals themselves. That being said, yes, we're definitely seeing more and more, and we've seen some of the companies understanding the value of being close to the student clubs.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the geolocalization of these companies and these student clubs play a very important role,
Yeah.
especially at this early entry position where the salary is not necessarily crazy high, where you're not going to relocate necessarily to another city. Maybe yes, maybe no, but at a higher level, it makes more sense to like just leave everything and just move. Then internship and early career position, then the city you're in when you graduate plays a big role as well, and where the company is located. So once again, it's a stats game to some extent, where
Hmm.
we need more students, more qualified people, more company in our network, and we're definitely increasing that. So we're seeing more and more of these match. And this is also why we started NeuroTechX services, trying to
Right.
facilitate that matchmaking.
Yes.
So one step in that direction was our job board. So we do have a lot of jobs, both on the industry side and the academia side of things, whether it's a master, postdoc, research assistant, lab manager, these kind of things. It's 100% neurotech related. So some of them might be more a bit core with the core community, and some of them might be a bit further,
Hmm.
because obviously neurotechnology as a field is very diverse,
Yeah.
multidisciplinary, as you said. So what does it mean to be 100% neurotech? Is a sales position in selling some medical equipment related still qualify? Yes and no. So we're trying to not dilute and stay with our core audience and our core members, but from time to time we'll go a bit just to see if these kind of positions are, and we have and if we have people that would be interested in these positions. So we really want to keep it focused on neurotech. And yeah, that's one step. And the next step after the job board with NeuroTechX services is really the matchmaking that we're offering. So Adam Seffler is leading the NeuroTechX services branch, and he's doing a fantastic job with doing this matchmaking, and we're scaling and we're getting better with the process as well, because we're having a lot of companies coming our way looking for talent. And as you said, we had a lot of talent and students, and
Hmm.
that we're looking for opportunities as well. So as part of our mandate as well, doing the connection, but also showing that there are jobs. I remember when I was an undergrad asking myself, like, neurotech, like, is that a future? Like,
Yeah.
will I get a job in that in the space if I go in that direction? And we are seeing more and more opportunities. We're seeing as
Yeah.
well more and more talent, which is good. And we need both, and we need kind of like this multiplier effect. So we'll see in 5 years and 10 years what the landscape would look like. But right now, we're definitely feeling that there's a lot of opportunities, and we're trying to make sure that at least that the best talent, the really people that are really motivated in the field,
Yeah.
can find what they're looking for.
Yeah, it seems when things are this early, you really need to find people that will evangelize NeuroTechX and neurotechnology and actually kind of what it's trying to accomplish, especially. I actually want to jump back when you were talking about kind of the speed of how things are advancing. And I always like to ask this question when I'm talking to someone who works in a very interdisciplinary kind of area as to, is there any subset of science or technology involved in neurotech that seems to be the bottleneck or the lagging factor that is inhibiting from moving faster and faster and faster? So sometimes it's material science needs to catch up. Usually it seems to be the hardware part that needs to catch up. But with neurotech, maybe it's just understanding how the brain works. I'm wondering kind of what are the limiting or the subsets of tech that move slower along.
All of it right now with neurotechnology, but they are very as in any multidisciplinary field, they are really intrinsically related and
Hmm.
connected. So if I had one thing to kind of as an overarching team would be resolution. I think that we don't have the resolution of the brain, neither in the tools and for understanding the brain itself.
Okay.
So if we go back few thousands of years, what kind of resolution do we have to look at the brain? Basically, I would take a head and I would look from outside. That's the non-invasive measurement system that I could have, and then
Yeah.
look at the behavior and try to do some correlation and some analysis on the behavior, and then look at the structure of the head. And then once the person is dead, or maybe I might kill that person to do some science, and
Yeah.
then open the skull, look at the brain, and once again look at the brain. I might try to put in water, in milk, or whatever, trying to like do weird experiment, trying to understand what's happening with that. What kind of real insights could I get from that? A
Yeah.
little bit, definitely something. Probably you can definitely figure out that the brain is somewhat chemical, electrical. So there is some experiments that you could do with such resolution, but obviously you're not going to understand the intricacy of the brain with such a resolution. Fast forward to 2000 something. Now we have EEG, fMRI, PET, MEG. We have different modalities. But here again, the resolution at which we're looking at the brain is not good enough to really understand and kind of like break the code of the brain. We definitely have way more insights
Yeah.
here and there. So we understand at the cellular level a bit more, neurons, neuroplasticity, I think, which is one of the biggest thing in the past, that we understand neuroplasticity and how the brain actually is more malleable than we thought. So we're starting to get some insights on different concepts, but we
Hmm.
don't have kind of like the whole, okay, we understand the code. We haven't reverse engineered the brain just yet.
Right.
And to do that and really unlock it's a matter of resolution. So we need to go smaller, do less damage, and
Hmm.
get more insights on a real-time fashion. Um, and right now, if you take technologies such as like ECOG, like UTRA, and these kind of thing where you just implant kind of like a brain chip and you
Yeah.
put that on the cortex, you can record, and you can record at a very good resolution. So
Yeah.
for the BCI field, that's kind of like that is a game changer, because now you can do some cool stuff with the motor cortex, but then you don't have the connectivity. And we know that the brain is not local, that there's very few functions that are in only one part of the brain. We're lucky that the motor area and the sensory motor part of the brain is very local to some extent. Obviously,
Hmm.
decision making and many other things are outside of that region, but we understand that and we've been able to map that. So that's obviously huge. Anything else pretty much is distributed. So
Right.
it's really hard to have these UTA array all over the brain to really, okay, I'm going to map the brain and I'm going to put these array all over the cortex. Like the damage that would that would be making is too big. So uh, we just need it. It will take time. We
Yeah.
all wish that we could do that tomorrow. And if the laws would change in some of the countries, that we could do crazy experiments on people. I'm not saying that I would, and I'm
Yeah.
not saying that as a society we should, but that would be a good example where the research would fast track to the next level if we
Yeah.
could do whatever we want. But we have ethics for good reasons.
Yeah.
So yes, if the only metrics was can we go faster to researching the brain, yes, let's put a lot of
Mhm.
money, let's put all the billionaires on the planet, and let's sacrifice I don't know, a sample size of 1 million people, and this will definitely get us next level. But we're not going to do that for good reasons.
Yeah.
So yes, we're all excited. Yes, it's coming, but it's a slow process. Right now, it's all about going closer and tighter to the brain, developing new ways of looking at the brain, resolution wise. So temporal and spatial, both. You usually have a trade-off. So if you think about EEG, you have very good temporal, but very bad spatial to some extent, and then EEG non-invasive, you also have all the artifacts and the fact that the signal is lost and diminished by a huge factor when it's reached the scalp. So I think that new approaches are really exciting right now when you look at optical ways of looking at the brain, using sound as well. So I think that a combination of using sound, light, electrical activity, and kind of like a mix of the three could be very interesting of trying to get a better understanding. But the holy grail is really, okay, let's put one piece of nanotechnology on each single neuron in the brain, then we'll be good. But how do you power that? How do you manufacture like these tiny little thing? The neural dust is a good example of like these kind of thing, where the idea is kind of like having a dust or a grain of salt, if you will, and kind of like blow all over the brain, and all these particles will record the brain from all over. So this is crazy idea, getting some more traction now in the brain. It's still too big, but they're using that on muscles, for example. So putting these these tiny particle where the power is not locally generated, it's from outside source where you send power, you send kind of like sound that gives enough energy to echo back something that contain information about the activity that was happening.
Wow.
So all these new things of trying to look at the brain is what we need right now. The current technology like EEG, and a lot of people that hear about NeuroTechX feels like we're a lot about EEG, and we're not. But right now, it's one of the most mainstream thing across the board. So fMRI is super exciting. And of course, from a research standpoint, fMRI has a way better resolution to understand different region of the brain for sure than EEG does. But fMRI for a new application in VR, I don't really see that happening, where you would have a fMRI machine in your living room to do some VR, but EEG, yes, and other biosensing. So NeuroTechX is really looking at the field from 360. So we want to talk as much about fMRI and brain stimulation. Then right now we do have a lot more FNIRS traction and attention coming in as well. So a lot of people are excited about FNIRS. From the research standpoint, but thanks to people like Mary Lou Jepson, who's looking at the brain from a light optical imaging standpoint. Facebook is doing the same thing. So obviously this is definitely growing. This field is definitely growing exponentially right now. So what is the bottleneck is really the resolution, and you can break down resolution with material science, different physics challenge. So when you look at the light, it's like physics. And math models. How do you send light, and how do you model the diffusion, and kind of like how the light propagate and navigate through the brain, and what kind of information do you get back? So now you're not in hardware necessarily anymore. Yes, you have the light, the laser, but you have the physics and math person who needs to model all the way once I give you a light. So Mary Lou Jepson liked to say that we have all the hardware in our cell phone, where you do have a technology that can send light on one side, and then you have a camera that can receive on the other side. And if you put like 100 cell phone basically around your head, you would have a brain imaging device. You still need to do the maths of like, I'm sending light and I'm listening on the other side. How does that travel through? But we're doing, I think, great progress on that side. I kind of felt that I was sounding like Trump saying that we're making tremendous progress on that. But yeah, the field is definitely evolving in different direction right now, which I feel is really exciting. Even invasive people are doing a lot of progress. Like I'm thinking about paradromics, Nia Therapeutics, that's spun out of UPenn, DARPA funded project. The neural dust, the Elon Musk project is also very exciting. Exactly. And this idea of like creating a sewing machine that will insert like tiny like threads. So for me, that's exciting. I think that what people need to understand is that these things take time. So if we go back to the example of VR, it took forever to just be able to have decent, okay, VR hardware. The brain is like order of magnitude harder. So we cannot really expect that Elon Musk stuff is going to work in like 2 years, and like we're all going to have N1 chips in 2-3 years. So, but if people are okay with that and understand the potential and want to be part of that, this is where NeuroTechX comes in. So NeuroTechX is more kind of a, as I said, the journey where if you're only curious, you come to NeuroTechX, you come to some events, you maybe participate in a student club, you learn more, and you might move on with your life and not go in neurotechnology, and that's okay. Because I think that in order for people to find their passion and when they want to dedicate their career and their skills and their intellect, you need to try stuff.
Yeah.
So how do you know if you want to evolve in the neurotech space? Well, you need to try it. You need to know people, talk with people, understand the challenges, and decide for yourself, is that something that I want to pursue or I want to do something else? So we've had a lot of people coming in NeuroTechX, exploring the field, learning more, and then moving on to AI, self-driving cars, cryptocurrency, VR, and it's okay. At the end of the day as well, what we're trying to achieve with NeuroTechX is STEM at all. So neurotechnology is exciting. So if we can excite like high school students to go in STEM and like hacking Arduino or like just the OpenBCI. Yes, OpenBCI, from some researchers, they're like, well, what is this? Like it's not real, like a EEG device or whatever. It's kind of like more a toy. But what it's bringing to the field is the impact is uncontestable right now. Like like what OpenBCI made for the field, nobody can argue against that. It might not have advanced the most advanced research, yes, let's agree on that, but for enabling people to get excited about this and then moving on and making a master's and then a PhD degree, that's very what will make the difference 5 years from now, not now, but in a few years from now. So I think that if people are patient, get in touch with NeuroTechX, try the neurotech field, look at the different challenges, as you just mentioned, like what are the bottlenecks, what are the challenges that is preventing the field from moving forward, and then they decide for themselves if that's something that they want to do or they want to move on, and both are good.
Yeah, and I know you touched a lot on the main thing being, resolution. Are we seeing more of a push towards the fully invasive route? It seems like a couple of years ago, at least from my knowledge, I saw a lot of non-invasive, and it seemed that maybe the thought was that the public wasn't really ready for the idea of doing implants, but now really the high-profile companies and applications seem to be more the fully invasive route. Are we seeing more of a push towards that, or do people seem to be more comfortable with implants?
I think that if we, I'd be interested in kind of trying to plot the interest, and I think that they would kind of like do something like this, where they overlap, and kind of like sometimes the invasive is the flavor of the month, and then it's the non-invasive, and both. And I think that for the next, I don't know, let's say 10, 15 years at least, I think that they both will be exciting at times and push back at others. Obviously, the holy grail is the invasive from a resolution standpoint, where we really can impact the brain, we really can understand the brain. That's invasive. But the pushback obviously being you need to put technology in the brain directly, and you need to open the skull and everything. So from 100% scientific angle, we want to go invasive. If we're just looking at like how can we get there as a understanding the brain and influencing the brain, if we remove everything else, ethics, regulation, money, whatever, religion, obviously it's invasive. That is the holy grail.
Right
now, as human species, we don't necessarily want to go there. So there's kind of like this contrast of what's our real goal, and our ultimate goal will be achieved with invasive, but our belief system is more non-invasive. So there is this kind of like dichotomy of belief versus goals to some extent. So I think that we'll have both evolve in parallel. Some people will resonate more with the invasive, some others will be more non-invasive, some use cases will be more invasive, some other will be non-invasive. So I'm thinking for human enhancement, it does make more sense right now to go invasive, because it's not really legal or possible to do that kind of research. So you need to piggyback on the trying to repair the brain and bring it back to normal, for whatever that means, and going down that road where you're allowed to do invasive stuff. And once we will have made enough discoveries and a lot of breakthroughs using that leg, then I think that we'll see a shift where the Elon Musk of this world and other people will start pushing towards, okay, where are we going with this? Because right now it's too early to really discuss. So it's normal to have this pushback because we're just talking. It's kind of like a few people around, like a few buddies with a beer and just kind of like dreaming about the future. It's not even too relevant at this point, because the next 2-3 years, 5 years, we're not going to see people implanting themselves with brain chip for human enhancement just yet. But it's important to start talking about it because it's coming. So it's on the horizon. We just don't know when and how. So this is why I think that now we're seeing more of the discussion around it, more technologies and startup going in that field, which before it was really kind of like a few key people that were more in that. But DARPA did invest a lot in that, but they've also pivoted. So a few years ago when they launched the Brain Initiative, they did and they fund a lot of the invasive research. And now recently they've pivoted and fund more non-invasive, because they want to go non-invasive a bit more. So I think that it's always going to be both in parallel. Sometimes non-invasive will be more popular. Sometimes invasive will be very exciting because it has obviously more potential, but drawback at a societal level. I think that the discussion will be very different in 15 years from now.
Yeah. You mentioned there has been a pivot, and even in one of the recent videos from the BCI 101, you mentioned that Kernel actually received some backlash and did a pivot themselves. What do you think, why do you think people are maybe having cold feet about this neurotech stuff? What can be done to alleviate those concerns, and what exactly do you need to be more maybe transparent about or educate people on in order to get broader acceptance of this kind, especially when you're talking about fully invasive?
I think that this discussion is definitely wider than just the neurotech field. I think that if you take because I think that most people wouldn't necessarily disagree with invasive technology for disabled people. Like in the BCI field, for example, epilepsy, like the DBS of Medtronic, for example, for Parkinson, where you implant something in the brain, it's deep in the brain, and then when you switch it, the person has some tremors, shaking, and then you just turn the switch on, and then the tremors stop, and the person stop and can move freely, and then you remove that, turn it off, and then the tremors start again. I think that nobody would argue and say invasive is bad. Let's try to do the same thing non-invasively and sending electrical current all over the place and kind of like messing things up, where the person will slap his face. So really having a bad resolution. So everybody agrees with these neurological diseases with the full spectrum when you're trying to fix and repair the brain.
When it's cognitive enhancement, then things change.
Exactly. If you take the spectrum, 0 being normal for whatever that means, obviously there is no such thing as a normal brain. But if we're trying to repair functions, everybody agrees. It's from the 0 to enhancement that people have more trouble. And that discussion is not specific to neurotechnology, but human enhancement in general.
Yes.
Because for the first time, and what got me excited in neurotechnology myself is exactly this concept of human enhancement. I picked the neurotechnology because I could not master all the other aspect, but I'm personally intrinsically motivated with the concept of human enhancement in general. So and the I don't want to use the transhumanism word too much because it has some negative connotation for some people. But the ideology, or let's say the idea behind transhumanism of someone should be able to enhance himself, I think that this is very interesting, because never in, not just in human history, but in biological history, could a species reverse engineer itself. It was always, and obviously here you need to take a frame of belief that is not religious, but more to the theory of evolution. So if you believe in that, then it means that it's been evolution that dictated the rule of the game forever, since day 0 up to now. But for the first time ever, a species, the human being, is smart enough to understand its own making, and now we can play with the rules of the game, which was never possible before, where we start manipulating genes and living longer and enhancing and modifying ourselves. That was never an option before. So what it means for the next million years is very exciting, because we're talking about the evolution curve of, let's just take human beings,
Yeah.
and we're probably in an inflection point here,
Yeah.
where you had the human before enhancing themselves, and now this generation, I don't know if we will achieve and how much we'll achieve, but within the kind of like the previous, I would say, let's say 30 years, 40 years to the next 200 years, this is a moment like never before in human history. I mean, in the like 1,000 years before, the evolution within one generation was like very, very like limited,
Hmm.
slim to none. Yes, different things. I don't know, we go from horse to wheels and kind of like we evolve in that a little bit, but the transformation that now we're seeing is beyond what we can anticipate and understand of the consequences of that. So I think that we just need to reframe the discussion narrative about what does it mean to be human in the
Yeah.
first place. And I think that the next, not necessarily the next 5, 10, 15 years, because once again, things are moving slower than we want them to. We
Yeah.
all wish that neurotech, VR, AI, like, oh my God, like next 3 years we'll live in a different world. No, we
Yeah.
won't. We'll live in the exact same world that we're living in right now, with a bit more potential, a bit more, and then suddenly the whole thing will do like what the internet did.
Hmm.
But so it's very exciting, but we need to be also not delusional about it and being, oh my God, the next 3 years everything's going to change. But if you take a time window that is more like, let's say 50 years, yes, in 50 years the world will be a bit different than what it is now. If you take a bigger window, now you're like, wow, what we're doing right now will shift things like beyond what we can actually think about. So the discussion, I find the discussion really interesting, yet early. So
Yeah.
we're not in the midst of it. We're in the very flat, exponential, about to kick off phase of things. So it hasn't kicked off. It's just that now we can anticipate the kickoff coming in the next couple of decades. So that's what I'm personally excited about. And neurotechnology is one aspect which I happen to resonate more with that than gene
Hmm.
editing, like all the anti-aging movement and like
Yeah.
cure
Longevity,
diseases and things
all
like
that kind of
longevity.
stuff.
Like I'm super excited about that. I
Same.
just don't have like, there's only 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
And I felt like I'm no Einstein myself, so I'm not gonna break the code of the brain by myself, but what I can do is bring people together. So I decided I was more interested and more fascinated by the brain, so I picked my lane, and that's the impact that I want to do. I kind of made that commitment. A lot of people will go in neurotech and leave and do other things. I'm going to die in neurotech for sure. I'm going to spell my own career. I'm going to try, and then on my deathbed, I'll be like, I tried to bring this as far as I could, inspire as many people as I could, bring as much entropy. I wish I'm going to die with a, like Elon Musk want to die on Mars, knowing that he contributed to that. I want to die with a brain and with a chip in my brain, knowing that we've made that happen for human enhancement. That now we're talking about that, and that people have chips in their brain. If I can die with that, I'll be happy, even if it doesn't work well, if it
Yeah.
has bugs, and if that killed me in the first place. If I helped bring that discussion in a ethical fashion, accessibility, the price of the devices, the inclusivity, who's part of the discussion, who's making that world happening. If I contributed a positive ROI,
Mhm.
I'll definitely die a happy man.
Well, I can definitely say from a personal note, you're already on that way. I mean, for me, I was very much the same as you. I got into kind of human augmentation and, biohacking and stuff like that, looking into nootropics and all this stuff. And then just given my background with computer science, I realized, oh, like neurotech is probably the easiest way for me to kind of get into that realm, given my skill set. And being able to have something like NeuroTechX that actually gave me like a structured avenue to figure out what exactly is being done in this area and how can I get involved has already made a huge impact for me personally, like
Love it.
career wise. Obviously, I was one of the first people I think getting involved with NeuroTechX services potentially. So it's been awesome. So I thank you personally for that, for your contribution already. I think you've already made an amazing impact for sure.
Awesome. It's only the beginning. So
Yeah,
hope,
exactly. That's the
hopefully
best part.
I'll be able to reassess and reevaluate in 20 years from now and looking back and be like, yep, I did it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. So when people think about some of the applications either coming soon or right now with kind of BCIs, I think they think video games. They think, like you said, treating neurological diseases, helping people communicate through other avenues. Are there any other areas and applications that we're not quite aware of that are out there right now or being worked on? One I wanted to ask is anyone looking into the usage for technology in like therapy, for example?
100%. I think that one of the so we hear a lot about like the buzzwords and kind of
Yeah.
like what we see with the headlines. If you're not 100% in the field, what you hear a bit more is on the therapeutic side of things, which have made a tremendous progress in the last couple of years. Just the TMS, the number of FDA approvals, FDA clearance for like TMS devices, even recently TDCS devices, which is a bit crazy, given that we don't really control anything with TDCS. We just send an electrical current, and we don't really understand. Well, we understand ish, but
Hmm.
we don't control it. Let's say. So we're definitely seeing more and more uh, grounds and gains on that side. Just the COVID-19 had enabled NeuroTechX to get a FDA clearance on one of the therapies for is it AD? I think it's ADHD. Yeah, for ADHD, that when people cannot get access to clinicians and therapies like in person. So
Hmm.
now there is a solution at home. So definitely on the therapeutic side of things, I think that once again it's exponential. So we're just seeing kind of like the first few ones, but brain stimulation was not that big of a thing 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So once again, when you judge and when you look at the trends, you can in neurotech you cannot look at the like 1 year or 2 years. Like it's kind of like 5 or 10 years window where you kind of like look at things, because with the brain, with the FDA processes and things like that, like nothing really happens. It's kind of like the drug industry. You don't really judge in like a 2 year period. Like it's just a pipeline to from the research to the consumer, the patients really getting the drug. Like it's a 20-year window.
Right.
So neurotech is faster, so that's a good thing, but it has way less foundation to sit on, as opposed to like the drug industry where there's a lot of comparisons. But now we're just laying down the foundation for neurotech as therapeutics. So in the digital therapeutics world, the Digital Therapeutics Alliance, I think it's called, they are gathering a lot of the company. Obviously, one of the biggest in the field, if not the biggest, is Aculi, with Adam Gazzaley. So they are trying to just shift the whole to disrupt the whole industry, basically, from the payment system to prescription and the treatment and everything. So they are really up to something. So what has changed or is about to change, I would say that the digital therapeutics is really exciting right now. And also you combine that with the CBT side of things, with the cognitive behavioral therapy approaches, where an app on your phone can actually do big things for your brain,
Yeah.
because your brain is really malleable and has a lot of all the tools that it needs to fix a lot of the problem, even if it's kind of like an endogenous problem
Hmm.
created by its own, by the brain itself. It has all the tools to fix a lot of the problem itself. Now the problem is that we don't really have good feedback when it comes to the brain, and real efficient way of communicating with the brain to changing things, as
Right.
opposed to like physical therapy where I see my shoulders dislocated. It's easy. I just pop it back and then I see if it's fixed or not. I try again. I move. Oh, it's not. Okay, let's go harder. And it hurts, and then it's back, and then it doesn't hurt, and then you're like, oh, okay, it's done. Treatment done. With the brain, we don't have this feedback of like we can just look at it and see it's dislocated. So and we don't. And once we see that it's dislocated, we don't really know how to put it back in place. But the brain has a lot of the tools that it needs. So I'm really excited to see the tech, what the tech can actually do with things like neurofeedback, that it's been around for a lot of time, for a long time. And the thing, what is the most important thing I think to understand with the brain is that with the resolution that we have right now, no one size fits all approach works. So it's hard to 100% be confident that something is really working. Neurofeedback is the best example, where thousands of studies have shown that it's working, and another thousands have shown that it's not working. So what's happening here is that, yes, it's working for some individuals, but the problem is that the resolution at which we're using it and the way we compare, it's not working. So we try to reproduce something, it doesn't work. Doesn't mean that the concept and the science actually really doesn't work. No, because the thousands of studies that have shown that it's working cannot just be disregarded because of the other thousands.
Right.
So that's the thing with the brain, where it's hard to assess what works. You just need to try and be lucky to some extent. Obviously, you cannot build a therapeutics and medicine around being lucky, but that's where we're at right now with the resolution that we have, is that sometimes it works, and we're trying to, and FDA is trying to control, okay, we've been lucky more than we haven't been lucky to some extent. So we master now this enough to compensate for the risk when it's not working. Right. So for example, the FDA that NeuroTechX got is, what's the downside? Right now it's COVID-19. Right now people cannot really go outside. So what's the downside? And kind of like this risk reward evaluation, where we know it's not perfect, and we cannot claim that it's going to work on everybody all the time, 100%, but drugs don't work 100% of the time either. So I think that therapy is one of the most exciting area, obviously, for BCI. On the more entertainment side of things, or non-medical side of things, I think that what I'm personally, but obviously I'm biased, but what I think is very exciting is what BrainCo has attempted in China, and trying to with EEG and education. Not necessarily saying that it's a good approach, is this idea of leveraging neurotech for education. I think that there will be, I think that BrainCo was a bit victim of what Google Glass was, of just being the first one to try something that people are like, what the heck? But if you ask me in 20 years from now, I think it will be in VR with biosensors and we will have a virtual teacher.
Absolutely.
And we'll look back at BrainCo and be like, yeah, of course, like it makes sense to put like maybe not in a classroom, maybe not like in the settings that they attempted, and that's not going to be maybe the end product, but the idea, the concept of leveraging biosensors, whether it's the brain, heart rate, and other things, in an education context, to then adjust the content to improve the learning experience, it makes all the sense in the world. Why not?
Was the issue the handling of the data, the biometric data? Was that the main issue people were worried about?
Well, multiple children. The fact that it's not that validated. We know that it can provide value, but what's the real value? It's not like a 10x improvement on your learning skills. So children, data, unproven. It's the first one. It's a tech on someone's head, on a kid's head, that you're putting tech in a classroom setting. So all of that combined, you're like, I'd rather not. So don't do that, please. But once again, I think that it's the same thing as Google Glass. In 50 years from now, not 15, but in 50, are we all gonna have like lenses that overlay information in real time on people with camera, and we will be filming, and I'll be like, if I cross you in the street, my lens will tell me, oh, you had a podcast with this guy you met a few years ago, and will give me useful information. 100%. I think that we'll have this kind of tech with us, but in every sector, the first one that will push will get a pushback. In any sector, self-driving cars, the first one that releases get pushed back. The first, I'm thinking it's the same in everything. That there is like massive pushback. Like the AI in medicine, things like that. The surgical robotics, like I'm thinking about Intuitive Surgical, for example, one of the leading company in the field. A number of pushback in the lawsuits and things like that. That they are like but they are opening the field. Other company will then have like an open path, and it will be like, it's so easy. The next Google Glass in 2 or 3 iteration will be like, it was so easy for us. Thanks, Google, that you spent million, if not billion, in this kind of things, in lawsuits and things like that. But it's part of the game. You want to be first, and then you try to protect it. There is good sides of that, bad sides. If you're the first one, you try to protect everything, so it blocks others. But you're investing so much, and you're gonna have so much drawback and lawsuits and negative stuff, and you'll have to do PR to reignite your image. So I think that in neurotech we'll see that as well in every area when we try to, let's just like when Elon Musk will say we have a prototype, like what's going to be the reaction of people
Yeah.
when they say that yes, you can implant things and that lets you control your phone. You'll have a brain chip that lets you control something on your phone. Would you implant that? That's going to be an interesting discussion on the public place. So
Yeah,
definitely looking forward
absolutely.
for. So he's gonna eat a lot of pushback. He's gonna
Oh yeah.
and it's gonna go viral on Twitter, obviously knowing Elon
Yeah.
Musk, and it's gonna be exciting. And then other companies will definitely be able to, because he's gonna hit or other. I'm saying Elon Musk because right now he's the leading or the one pushing the most on the enhancing side of things,
Yeah.
connecting with his thesis with connecting the brain to the digital world. But I think that the underlying thesis behind being the first one to disrupt something where people are like, "Wow, this is way too much."
Mhm.
It's going to be through as we move forward in with neurotech and all different aspects of it.
Yeah, I think it helps having someone as, I guess, famous and public like Elon Musk in this sphere now, and it brings, I think, a lot of attention, a lot of good attention, I think. So that's
100%.
awesome. Before we move into our last segment, I actually wanted to touch upon the Neurotech Primer book that was mentioned in one of the videos. Um, what is what is going to be entailed in this book, and who is it kind of targeted at?
Yeah. So with the last few years, we've had a lot of questions, and a lot of the questions we've received across kind of like, let's just say our net, NeuroTechX net, where we
Hmm.
have events, we do online stuff, we do events, conference, hackathons, we collaborate, we hear, and we have a lot of things coming down our net, and a lot of the questions are coming over and over again. So our idea was, let's create a book that answers all these questions that we've receiving that people are generally asking for, so that when they start asking these kind of like common questions, so it's not necessarily for the more advanced people that have done like a postdoc in the field, yet they will
Hmm.
still, I think, find it interesting, because if they are like doing a postdoc, they are really excited about it if they've been
Yeah.
around in the field for years. So just out of curiosity, you'll probably buy the book and kind of like look at it and not learn too much, but be excited, and or use that to kind of like judge a little bit of NeuroTechX, kind of like the way we disseminate science and things like that and whatnot. So
Right.
I think that the book, everybody interested in neurotech, if you're not interested in neurotech, and you're just kind of like looking what's coming, then don't bother. The book won't bring you any value. There are
Yeah.
many other books
Maybe something like
that
Neurogeneration, I think, was a newer one that I'm reading right now. That might be a good one.
the Tanley. So yeah, read that few I think 2 weeks ago, something like that. But yeah, it's really targeted at trying to answer a lot of the questions that we've had. So I would say that
Okay.
the main audience is people that are interested and curious and want to know more about the neurotech space,
Hmm.
where it's at, what we can foresee in the future, different technology. So it's really kind of like a 360 in a trying to answer all the questions that are coming over and over again. So that also we can, next time we receive these questions, we can just say go buy the book.
Awesome. That sounds amazing. When is that going to be available?
It's a community-driven effort, so it takes a bit more time than if you're kind of you're writing the book yourself and you're
Right.
taking out a year or you're doing it. We're crowdsourcing that with a lot of people that have expertise in different sphere to answer the questions in a more scientifically valid way, yet in a format where people can understand at any level. People can understand that. So it's expected to be released by the end of the year. Yeah, about that. About the end of the year, it should be available.
Awesome.
2020.
Um, that's great. I'm probably gonna get it. It'll probably be a nice refresher for me as well, as like you said, a lot of industry people are experts already might dive back in just to pick up some things.
And it's also like one of the thing that when you're in a field as complex as neurotechnology, and it's true for other field, it's always about knowing what you don't know to feel
Yeah.
comfortable and confident. Like, what's the perimeter of things in that space? So by reading these things, sometimes it's just kind of like, okay, they've talked about everything that I know, therefore I know kind of what needs to be known.
Yeah.
But sometimes there is new things that you're like, oh wow, okay, I didn't know that. So feeling confident as well, like of drawing the circle of what is neurotech, is very important. So, for example, like the optical imaging and things like that, people might know about EEG and fMRI, but they might know less about the fact that we're using light to do some brain imaging. So kind of like just knowing the different things and knowing, okay, TMS and brain stimulation, okay, this is where we at. So drawing the circle of what you know, I think is very relevant in your own self-confident, and or deciding when you need to do what you need to double down and explore a bit more, but at least you feel like you know you have the big picture and now you can double down on specific aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last segment of this podcast, what I usually do is on my Instagram, I'll do daily polls, kind of a yes or no. So some of the examples are, would you get a brain implant? And then people kind of vote and stuff. So I'm just gonna go through some of the recent polls, and I'll just kind of get your answer on it, and then we'll see where you fell into how people voted. Does that sound good?
Yep. Do it.
Okay. So, first one here. Would you rather have advanced VR equipment or advanced smart clothes?
It's a good one. uh I'm really 50-50. I will go with the VR.
The
I will go with
VR,
the VR.
okay. You
But
actually
I'm
felt
really 50-50. Yeah, yeah. Could go both way.
okay. Surprisingly, that was actually the minority. Was 74% of people going for the smart clothes, which I was surprised about.
I really stated. I was like, okay, I'm gonna like I know me. It's gonna be easy to answer, but that one was really yeah, both.
Oh, okay. Next one. Would you consider lab-grown meat as part of your diet?
100%. Well, give me a time frame. Like right now, no. I would wait a little bit. I don't want necessarily to be one of the early adopters on that one. Um, but the thesis, the underlying idea of creating the meat, 100%. I just don't know enough yet, and I don't necessarily have the time to dig myself to become a bit more of an expert to really understand. And what
Mm,
I fear with the food industry is that we don't, like, we're being lied. Like
yeah, it's not very
99%
transparent.
of stuff is like we don't know anything, and
Yeah.
it's just a money generating machine that I personally feel I cannot trust anything. So my thesis personally is to try also to diversify. I'm not sticking with like one brand or one thing,
Right.
and just trying to diversify, assuming that everybody is lying to me anyway, and I don't really
Yeah.
know what's really in these products. So obviously trying to be as raw as possible, but as you add layer of complexity of the food itself, then I just assuming that everybody is lying to me, so I cannot really trust anyone. So the lab grown meat is a perfect example of that. Like I have no idea if I can trust that.
Uh-huh.
So the idea, 100%, but I'm waiting for more data and more people, to not be the first one of being a victim of, oh, this was kind of like that was bought by a rich person trying to make a lot of money out of something. But
Yeah,
that's just
yeah.
my paranoia side of things when it comes to the food industry.
Okay. I do actually have an earlier episode where I interview one of my friends that works at a cellular agriculture startup, and they make the culture and the solution for lab grown meat, and then they're going to sell it to companies like Beyond Meat or whoever wants to actually make it. So it might be something to check out if you want to hear a little bit
Yeah,
more about how it exactly works. But
yeah,
you were in the
because it's
majority.
very
Yeah,
interesting stuff. Yeah.
it's kind of one of those things like neurotechnology where it seems like an inevitable industry. That's just it's going to happen, right? Um,
But it goes back to what I said with like reverse engineering. Like until now, we were kind of just going by. Now it's so the food and sleep, I think, is the same thing, where we're trying to reverse engineer the processes
yeah,
of things. So what is food? So until now it was kind of like evolution based to some extent, where you just kind of like you eat and we understand a bit more of the macro, micro, and kind of like what you should eat. Now we're trying to, okay, let's not let nature tell us, but really reverse engineer the whole process of eating, and I find it really fascinating. So yes, with the thesis on that for sure.
awesome. You were actually in the majority with that. Surprisingly, 71% of people said they would be okay with lab grown meat, which was good to see. Lots of open minds out there. Next one here. Are you excited for foldable devices or soft tech?
Foldable. Give me just a few examples, just to make sure that I answer
Like
the
there's a
way.
lot the most common examples now that people are seeing are foldable phones,
Yep.
basically, bendable screens.
Uh, if I'm so, what's the angle of the question? If I'm in favor,
If you're excited about it, if it's something that interests you.
how can you not? I mean, the idea that so tech has always been kind of like hard material. Like I cannot bend an electronic circuit, but when you think about it, like we need to, like the next phase
Yeah.
is that it needs to be like malleable, flexible, that we can do whatever we want. So from like textile tech, it's the same thing with a lot of people are asking me like EEG is not the paradigm of the future. The way that we see electrodes today, the hard electrode is definitely not what we need in the future.
Right.
But the concept of reading electrical activity from the brain is, so can we have something like flexible, like a shampoo or whatever that you put kind of like in your hair, and magnetically speaking, all the particles are kind of like just positioning themselves and creating kind of like a small headset that you don't see, that is just kind of like in your hair with tiny particle. The future of tech is like that, is like nanoparticle, small, flexible. So I think that we need to go from hard and solid to flexible, and from big to, well, we're already really small, but we need to go to nano
Yeah.
next. So I might be biased, but yeah, I'm definitely excited. Is that something that I follow? Not really.
Yeah.
But the best example in the neurotech was the recent like the idea of either tattoo or putting a patch, for example, as biosensor. So that's a good example of like more soft bendable technology, as opposed to like having like a brain chip, which is more fixed to some extent, but having this idea of like having a patch and a flexible wiring. I think that's the like the ultimate brain, like the ultimate EEG, let's say, would be for someone who's shaved completely, of having like just a wire sticker
Yeah.
patch that you just like stick, and you have all the wire and all kind of like the electronic path that is like fully flexible and kind of like on the surface of the head with no hair. So yeah, 100% aligned, but I don't really follow that space too much.
Awesome. Yeah, that one was 50-50. So there is people aren't 100% sure. Some people not.
Why won't you? Why would you not?
I think people don't realize that it's not just about being able to fold your phone. It's about what soft tech means for other applications. I think that's why some people would be like, maybe not.
But it's not 100, like not everything needs to be like soft and kind of
Yeah.
old and kind of like be
Yeah.
solid, obviously. Not like everything needs to like be soft. But if you have both, then 100%. If it can be flexible, you can bend it, and sometimes it's kind of like it's rigid, then yeah, I think that we need to explore more and more of that.
Awesome. And last one here. This poll has actually just been released today, so we don't have the results, but the Tesla Cybertruck, cool or looks completely whack?
Wow, that's both and none of these answers. It's both actually. It's cool because it's whack,
Yeah.
and it's whack because it's cool. So I don't know. If I have to pick one, I'll go with cool, because we need that kind of ballsy move and not
Yeah.
caring, because that's what enables innovation, fashion. Sometimes you hit, sometimes you miss, but if you don't try new things, you're definitely not moving forward and not helping others to move forward. So big respect for the ballsy move here, and we'll see what the market says about it, and then there will be a next iteration and or other people. So it will move the discussion further, and that's personally what I'm always all about. So for that, I need to go with the cool.
Wise words to end on, Yannick. Thank you for coming in and talking. I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, especially these days. Is there anything you want to plug if people are listening to this and they're interested in neurotech? Where can they go to kind of get informed and get involved in the community and the conversation?
So the easiest things, if you're interested, is go to neurotechx.com, obviously, and subscribe to the newsletter. So I think that the newsletter, we're doing a really good job with trying to send information, not too much, but enough that something will excite you. So depending on your angle, if you're interested in the industry, on the research, on the money aspect, like investments and things like that, on the FDA and therapeutics, whether it's more in the community, what NeuroTechX is about, and things like that. We're trying to, and now it's going to be every other week, so like once every 2 weeks. So I think that that's the easy way, and start from there, and you'll pick something that you're interested in, and then you'll hopefully we'll be there with you along your neurotech journey.
Awesome. Thank you, Yannick, again. And thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome.